Does that look all right, Elaine? Okay, this is a short talk that's going to focus on the most southerly penguins found in the world. Those that you find in Sub-Antarctica and Antarctica. So the Falklands, South Georgia, Antarctica, and some of the other islands around the area. That's one of the colonies we saw when I was there. And I thought I'd take a few tips from Ray, who, those of you who were here last time will know he was talking about the names of birds and their derivations. So I'm just struggling at the moment to get the pictures out of the way. So I thought I'd start with what does actually penguin mean? There's a number of couple of thoughts. It was supposedly from Welsh penguin, which means whitehead. However, they don't. This kind of puts you off, doesn't it? Oh yeah, that's a good idea. Thank you. Anybody remember where the switches are, Bob? Okay. I'll leave you to decide. I don't mind the slightest. I'm reading from the screen. Right. It could also be from the Latin pinguis, which refers to fat, say, or blubber. Fat or blubber. So take your pick. Yes. There certainly was. Some of them have been harvested in the past for oil for blubber. The same name, by the way, was used for the great auk in the past. But let's move on to where do you find penguins? That's where the penguins are in the world. As you can see, all the southern hemisphere, except the only one that ever gets into the northern hemisphere is the Galapagos penguin. So that's right on the equator, and a few of the islands are in the north, and you can get some penguins there. Otherwise, it's very much a southern hemisphere bird. And those are the penguins of the world. I've put a question mark 17, 18, or 19 on the number of species because it depends how you split Rockhopper up. Most people appear to divide them into southern and northern, which is what I'm going to do today. So I'll be talking about southern Rockhopper, but some people lump them into one species. Some of us split them into three, and then there's another species, the Macaroni. Sometimes get the royal, sometimes get lumped together. So take your pick. But you've got 18 pictured there. I'm going to talk about 8 of those today, which are the ones you find in Antarctica and Sub-Antarctica. Are those? I'll give you a clue. This is from a very good book, which you're very welcome to have a look at afterwards. Published by Wild Guides. Bob Still, who publishes our reports for us, put that picture together. If you look closely, there's a few clues that it's a montage, and you can see different bases. But those are the 8 species that you find in Sub-Antarctica and Antarctica, arranged beautifully in height order. So starting at the bottom, we've got southern Rockhopper, then Magellanic, then Adelie, then the Macaroni with the rather flash eyebrows, Chinstrap, Gentoo, King, and then Emperor. So I say thank you to Rob for allowing me to use this, and I really do recommend the book. It's beautifully illustrated. It doesn't cover Falklands and South Georgia much, but it does cover all the penguins and most of the wildlife you can see there. Now, this talk is based on a trip I did earlier this year. I was very lucky to travel on this. That's the MV Ortelius. We went in from January the 13th to February the 4th this year on a nature tech trip. To me, it was a big boat, but it's quite small for the Antarctic. 96 clients, but we had 12 leaders. They make sure that you all can get off the boat together when you go out from the Zodiacs and so on, so there's no queuing and so on. And it was absolutely marvellous. I feel I've been wanting to do that trip for many years, and I'm grateful that I could. That was what we were supposed to do. So we started, fly to Ushuaia at the southern tip of Argentina, then go by boat to the Falkland Islands, then across to South Georgia, spend about 3 or 4 days there, then go down to South Orkney Islands and back down to the Antarctic Peninsula. If you look closely, you'll see we're only due to literally visit the tip of the Antarctic Peninsula. and hardly go anywhere down it at all. And then back by a Drake Passage to Ushuaia and fly home via Buenos Aires. However, that's not what happened. The bird flu, unfortunately, had hit South Georgia quite badly. So we couldn't spend much time there. Instead of spending 4 days, we only spent 2 there. But it did have some really interesting side effects. That meant we could go further down the peninsula. So this is what we actually did. I'm going to try and do this with a mouse so you can all see it. There we are. So we boarded the boat at Ushuaia. Then we went up as planned to the Falkland Islands, landed here with Marcus and Saunders on the first day, and then Stanley on the second. That was as planned. We then went across to South Georgia via Shag Rocks, and we visited a couple of areas, a few areas at South Georgia, but only made one landing at Rickham. Because we weren't able to land anywhere else, and it was severely curtailed by the bird flu, we then headed down to the peninsula via Elephant Island and then Half Moon. And then what happened was, instead of just visiting the tip, we went all the way down, really, and much further down the peninsula. Now, that's on that map, you can't really see it, but I can show you on a larger scale. So instead of just being right at the top, we came down the west side and visited quite a few areas. It meant we had much more time in that area. It's a pity we couldn't see as much of South Georgia as we like, but we benefited from it by going down there instead. That's just to prove we've been on the peninsula. It's the classic, you know, you've proved we landed. That's me and my friend Debbie, who I travel with. Now, we're going to get on to the birds now, but before we look at the penguins, I'm just going to briefly introduce you to some of the animals that eat them and their chicks and their eggs. There's quite a lot of predators. A lot of the birds will predate the eggs and the chicks. Some of them will also predate the adults, but only at sea. There's quite a few types of skua. That's a South Polar skua and brown skua. That's actually got a penguin egg in front of it. We watched it for some time. It failed miserably to get into it, but I had my, you know, I don't think it wasn't giving up trying, so I'm sure it would have made it in the end. And there's also quite a few gulls around. For instance, that's a dolphin gull, and there's kelp gulls. All of those will predate the eggs and the chicks. But there are no other land predators other than for the adults, other than these birds. Some of the birds that predate them, that's a striated caracara, which you find on the Falklands. And then there's the giant petrels. That's a southern giant petrel and a northern giant petrel. And if you're thinking, how can you tell the difference? With difficulty. You have to look at the colour of the tip of the bill. And I have to say, a lot of the time it was taken on us, but if you just look carefully at the southern, you can see it's got a greenish tip. And you can't really see it very well on the picture in the northern, but slightly pinkish, reddish tip. Now, they predate penguins on land. They take the eggs and chicks, but they also take adults at sea. Where, of course, there are other predators. One of the benefits of going further down to Antarctica was we did see quite a few leopard seals, quite difficult to see. That looks quite benign there, but believe me, it's got amazing teeth, and it's I wouldn't want to meet one on a dark night. Quite a few other seals also predate penguins, sadly. And of course, the top predator in the area, orcas. We only saw them once. That was down in Antarctica. Again, it was about as far as we went. But we did actually, I just should mention, we did see a lot of other cetaceans, but not as vicious. So, time for some penguins. I'm going to go through them roughly in the order we saw them. So, when we first landed on the Falklands, the first penguin we started to see, Magellanic. Medium size, but for those who don't do metric, it's about 25, 28 inches. And named after the Portuguese explorer, Ferdinand Magellan. But I'm not going to be very good at saying the scientific names, but I'll have a go. Spheniscus is from the ancient Greek, meaning wedge, because of their thin wedge-shaped flippers. Now, these are related to 3 other banded penguins. That's the African, Humboldt, and Galapagos. None of those are in this area, but they all have quite a similar banding pattern. So these are found in South America and the Falklands. And we often saw them like that on the beach. It's a fairly classic view of these penguins. As you can see, they just come out of the water, doing a bit of preening. And you also notice that this was on the Falkland Islands, where we had a beautifully hot sunny day. We'd all put on enough layers of clothing to cope with 0 temperature, and ended up struggling because we weren't allowed to put anything down on the floor because of biosecurity. So we had to kind of learn how to take off layers of clothing without actually dropping anything. These nest in colonies in burrows or under bushes. It's the only one in the area that does that. There's some of the other banded ones do. These lay 2 eggs each. You can see a fairly well-grown chick there behind the adult. Usually raise both chicks. And I've put in a few little videos in here because you can get a good feeling of what I like it. I should say I took all these photos except for one of the montage of penguins and one I'm going to show later. And my video technique is poor. Okay, so you have to get used to the shaking, especially gets worse when I'm actually on a boat as well. But those are 2 of the Magellanic chicks begging for food, and the adult doesn't look at all impressed. Also on the Falklands were the Gentoos. This is the penguin we probably saw most of overall in the holiday. It's the 3rd largest penguin, fairly big size. The origin of the name Gentoo is really unclear. It was a term that was used by the British to distinguish Hindus from Muslims, and there's a bit of speculation that it could be because of the white patch resembles a turban. Or that's a guess, personally. Or there was another suggestion it could be a variation of another name for it, Johnny Penguin. Its scientific name is rather unflattering. It means rump-legged, basically, in the same family as Adelie and Chinstrap. All, as you can see there, bush-tailed penguins with the long, stiff tail feathers. The Papua, by the way, is a misnomer. They were thought to come from Papua New Guinea, but they don't. But it's often the case they get stuck. So these are in Sub-antarctica, as here, the Falklands, but also down in Antarctica and in South America. And they, unlike some of the other penguins, they rarely stray from the colony. They're all year round. And that just shows how easy it is to get close to a penguin, basically. In fact, it was sometimes very difficult to keep it far enough away. And we all, at some time, got told off by the guides. They don't have any, the adults don't have any land predators, and they are really they won't walk up to you like a few inches away, but they're quite happy to be a meter or 2 away and not get bothered. And they're very, I'll be showing you a few penguin highways later. And if you're trying to cross one, they'll just wait for you to go. I mean, we were told to give way to them, but sometimes they happily give way to us. That's a colony of Gentoos on the Falklands. You can see the nests. And you can also see in that picture some well-grown chicks if you look carefully. There's some over on this side. And I think there's another one over here. But, fairly bare on earth. They're basically just on stones. And that's what they use to make their nests. So stones in rocky areas, and they're one of the penguins that steals stone from other penguins. We would watch quite a lot of that with the Adelie penguins, which I'll show you later. You can see some young chicks there. They do lay 2 eggs, and they normally raise both of them. And you can see the one on the right there has got 2 small chicks at its feet. I mentioned penguin highways. I couldn't resist putting this in. I just thoroughly enjoyed watching them walking down their highways. So that's one of the 3rd largest penguin, and it's managed to almost disappear into the highway. And these they cut themselves, so if they're going up to the rocky areas, I'll just play that again. They actually it's deep enough for them to be almost completely merged. They also use humans' paths if they've got the chance. If we've created a path and we've been in there, they will use that as well. And they're fascinating watching them pass each other. Sometimes they're just wide enough. But I did see one at one point where one was just not going to give way, so the other one had to hop up and down. And, you know, quite well, appeared amiable, but who knows? So let's move on to the smallest one.
Smell of those.
Ah, yes. No, actually, I haven't mentioned the smell. I've just had a question from the floor about the smell. I can't. It's very difficult to capture on a video. You can hear them. You'll hear them again, and lots of wind and so on. But yeah, they're quite. They can be quite pungent. So onto the smallest of the 8 penguins. This is a southern rockhopper. Quite a small, short penguin. As I said, some people split this into southern and northern, and even further at times. And simply named for how it jumps over boulders. It's not the only one that does that, but it was the one that first was seen. Its scientific name is again from the ancient Greek, means fine, good diver. So it's a good diver. And its species name means golden haired, which is what I like that. It's one of the crested penguins. The only other one in the area is the Macaroni, which I'll be coming to later. This was one of the, we only saw rockhoppers on the Falklands, and it was one of the most confiding of them. They're a huge numbers in a colony, and I just couldn't resist putting in these. They were so amenable to having their photo taken and showing off their hairstyle. I didn't need much persuasion for me to fall for them. One thing we didn't realise was these often nest in with other species, so we were a bit taken aback when we saw them like here. Those are in with imperial shags, so all black and white as you can see, but they all mix in together and nest together. So that's a nest of. They have nests of peat, pebbles, and tussocks, and they lay 2 eggs, but normally, sadly, only one survives. You can see some well-grown chicks in that picture as well as the shags and the adults. And yet another video. At least the chick got something that time. We were really quite close to this colony, and they really took no notice of us. And as you just heard, apart from the wind noise, it can be very noisy, as well as you said, smelly. And I thought I should just show you a short video of a rockhopper living up to its name.
Ready to go back.
Yeah, they're not obviously the only penguin that does that. I was watching that partly because I wanted to see what it did with the wire fence, but it just, you know, limboed under. Well, let's move on to one of the larger penguins. That was the smallest. Let's move on to the second biggest penguin. We saw these first on the Falklands again, but the main colonies we saw on South Georgia. Big penguins. King originally because they thought at first they were the biggest penguins in the world. And their name means wingless diver, same family as one of the other penguins, and obviously from Patagonia. You don't get them in Antarctica, only Sub-antarctica, but as I said, we saw most of the biggest colonies we saw were in South Georgia. A very long breeding cycle, takes 14 to 16 months, and they only raise 1 chick. So they're lucky they can get 2 chicks in about 3 years. That's the colony when we first saw it that we saw in South Georgia. They don't have nests, they just have a tiny little territory really, and they're absolutely huge colonies. They only lay 1 egg, so obviously they only raise 1. And I'm just going to zoom in on that colony. And that's, I don't know how anybody ever estimates the number of penguins there. I mean, it's just amazing, isn't it? Yeah, lots and lots and lots. Because it was South Georgia, we were only able to see these from the boat. So again, I'm afraid the video for this, for them swimming, is even more shaky. And it was lovely to see them going in and out of the water quite often, and often in groups. You didn't see many going in by themselves, obviously. And like all the other penguins, they have what they call a catastrophic molt, all in one go. It takes about 3 to 4 weeks to lose and replace all their feathers, and during that they have to stay on land. They can't go to eat, they can't go to sea. And I have to say that I shouldn't give them human emotions, but some of them look really fed up, you know, and itchy. And that one on the right, you just feel you want to get comb out its feather toy. So that's the second biggest one. Let's go back down to one of the smaller ones. So those are, we saw, as I said, a lot on South Georgia. The other one that we saw only on South Georgia is the Macaroni penguin, the other crested penguin that we saw. That photo isn't mine. That was taken by Tim Melling, who was one of the Nature Tech guides. Because this was South Georgia and we weren't able to land, and we weren't also, because of the weather on the day, we weren't able to go out in the zodiacs. We only saw them at a distance, so I'm afraid I didn't get any good photos, but he took that from the boat when it was swimming past. So this is the other crested penguin, like Rockhopper. The name Macaroni apparently comes from the dandies that were known as macaronis in 18th century Britain. But there's also a suggestion that it's because it looks faster. But they're definitely more orange than the Rockhoppers, which are yellow. And their species name is again more Greek, and that means golden crest. Quite nice. So thank you to Tim for that photo. And they were nesting on really quite steep, rocky island, and it's just a shallow scrape, and they're again densely packed colonies, but not like the king penguins you just saw, which are fairly flat and some steep, but these are just going up and up. Lays 2 eggs. The first one is smaller than the second, and normally only the second one is survives. They don't really know why, but some of the other crested penguins, apparently when the female lays the second one, then tips the first one out of the nest, which doesn't seem to make any evolutionary sense to me, because why bother? But there. And this was some of the penguins. And they're not only rockhoppers. I was very impressed with how good it was.
Washed back down again.
Again, we were on a boat. I was on a boat when I took that video, so it's up and down. But it was lovely to see them climbing around, even though we couldn't get close to them. They're very good climbers, as I said. I did take one more video of them, though, just showing you popping them out. Only short bits. It's quite difficult. I found that very tricky to do. But on to one that is often the favourite penguin of a lot of people, a chinstrap. I don't need to explain its English name. It's related to the Gentoo, so it has the same rump-legged family name, and then obviously Antarctica. So it's another medium-sized one. Only not found in Antarctica, only Sub-antarctica, including South Georgia, which is where we saw them. And oh, sorry, it is found in Antarctica. And this is another one that is migrating. Yeah, actually, I forgot we saw this down in Antarctica, and it was the wettest day possible. It was just rain all the time we were on the island, but it was still wonderful to see them. They have a nest of pebbles, and they're often high up. They like to get up above. They go up on hillside slopes and rocky outcrops. So there's quite a lot of moving about and effort to get there. And this one lays 2 eggs and incubates both of them. And this is a short clip of a rock penguin highway. So again, penguins are surprisingly good, I think, climbing. I went counting. Not always perfect, but you know. But one of the reasons for showing that is that I hadn't realised at the time is that their feet are 2 colours. They're pink on top and black underneath. This means that when they're swimming, the whole of the top of the bird is dark and the whole of the underneath is white or pale, counter shading. So from above, it all looks dark in the dark water. From below, it all looks pale against the bright light. Some penguins have all pink feet and some have all dark feet, but some of them have gone for this, have evolved to have this double coloured feet. And that is a southern giant petrel, which I spotted next door to a group of penguins. And we'll take a chick egg, it would take the adults on land, it would take them in the sea. And I was thinking, oh, what's going to happen? And then I saw this one. It's not going to take no any. Unfortunately, I stopped there because it was raining and the camera was getting very soggy. But apparently, chinstraps are one of the most aggressive and ill-tempered penguins, which I thought that showed beautifully. I don't think I'd want to, if I was that size, I don't think I'd want to take on a petrel, a giant petrel. Right, 2 more penguins to go. The Adelies are lovely, medium-sized, only in Antarctica, named after wife of a French explorer, the wife of Jules Dumont d'Urville, whose crew found the first specimens. And it breeds further south than any other bird in the world, another migratory one. Very smart looking birds. I couldn't resist putting that in just because I like how they walk uphill. You can see that's the same family as Gentoo, with a stiff tail that helps it balance. And there it is, in there, one of the colonies with a well-grown chick. This is another of those penguins that steal pebbles. Come on in a minute. They nest on the bare rocky ground, just on pebbles, and they lay and incubate 2 eggs. But we were fascinated watching them.
It's got a good supply.
A thief in 14 action. I like how it's choosing it, so let's have a look. It makes me wonder why the ones from where it stole it didn't do something. I mean, they had a bit of a go at it, but didn't really have a go. But apparently, it was just going on all the time. We saw that penguin, I think, take about 2 or 3, but others were also doing the same. Very, very entertaining. So that's 7 penguins, and I've got 1 more to go. As I said, we went further south than we were expecting. And we were cruising past the Gentoo colony on Pelear Island down in Antarctica. And Mike, the guide in our Zodiac, our small boat, spotted 1 penguin, which was much bigger than the others. Which was not just a surprise, but it was absolutely delightful. You just don't see them away from the colonies. You normally, to get to see emperor penguins, you need to take an expensive helicopter flight, if the weather's good enough, and you might get to spend half an hour at the colony. But it was just amazing that we managed to find one. And simply, as I said, because we couldn't go to South Georgia, we went further south than we would normally do. So there's a Gentoo, being intrigued by it. It was quite a long way away, so not wonderfully sharp photos, but at least it was sitting on a ridge. Yeah, you've got to be grateful for that. We were very lucky to see it. As I said, one of the guides on the boat, the expedition guides, had been down there 28 times and had never seen one. So it just shows you how tricky they are. So we were, it was as soon as we'd seen it, then all the other zodiacs came and joined us. So that's the emperor penguin, a very big penguin, enormous really, very heavy, up to 45 kilograms, so much bigger than the king penguins. Only seen in Antarctica, as I said. They breed on stable pack ice, but it can be a hell of a long way inland, and they're unusual in their breed in the winter. So they actually start courtship in about March, April, and then lay eggs in May and June, and then the female goes off to get food while the male gets left. I'm sure you've all seen the huddles that you get on the eggs. Quite an amazing lifestyle, really. Their name is the same as the family name is the same as the king penguin, meaning wingless diver, and the species name is on over the German naturalist Johann Reinhold Forster, who was with James Cook on his second voyage. So I feel very lucky indeed, not just to have gone, but to actually see that as well. And just a reminder of the penguins you've seen. Right, so Rockhoppers, Magellanic, Adelie, Macaroni, Chinstrap, Gentoo, King, and then the huge Emperor at the end. And I can't finish without having one picture of an iceberg with a few penguins on. We saw quite a lot, but it's very difficult to photograph. So I thought I should always finish that. I can't do a sunset in Antarctica. So that's it. Right. The whole thing I've gone on longer than I should have. Let me just close the slides down, okay? And I will pass over to Neil, who's going to do the next part of the evening and give us a quiz. So could somebody turn the lights back on, please? Oh, I need a piece of paper for this, don't I? So at home, please get yourself armed with a piece of paper. I will put you up on there. Whether you like it or not. Come and see if you're invisible through the on the.
I think I'm visible now.
No, you're visible. Oh yes.
Yes, I am visible. Actually, but if I get to, it might be better if I sat down. I'll tell you what, I might sit down anyway because. See, there's it. Way, that's good. God, this technology is terrible. I suppose I ought to say, can you hear me at home? But of course, I can't hear you saying, no, I can't. But never mind.
Hopefully, they'll put something in chat.
Indeed, yes. Well, tonight's going to be a little bit different. I think we might be running a bit late. I was told I had about 20 minutes, so what I might do is actually cut out one of the rounds that I was intending to do. This is not a particularly serious quiz. There's some easy bits and there's some difficult bits, but it's also an extended plug for this wonderful book, which anybody who was at or watching last week's talk after the AGM will know. This is Ray Reedman's book, The Vanishing Mugall, which is all about the derivation of both the English and scientific name birds. And it's a
couple of things. Firstly, we're just passing around paper.
Oh, okay. So, well, it's okay. I'm still doing the introduction. So carry on.
Okay, so we're only asking more quiz. What we're going to do is have the questions and then show another quiz. So
oh, okay. Well, you might.
Don't feel you have to put it out there.
Okay. You might get an extra round then. Well, I will carry on doing my introduction and plug for Ray Reedman's book. It's a fascinating read. It's not just the bits about birds, bird names rather, but also the supporting text. I was having a quick browse through this. My copy's only just arrived, and I picked up sort of unusual facts that you will never find out otherwise. Did you know, for example, according to the Swedish naturalist Linnaeus, the person who's responsible for devising the binomial scientific name system, that in the 18th century, people used to keep tame tree creepers. And why did they keep tame tree creepers? Because if you had a tame tree creeper, that's quite difficult to say, isn't it? If you had a tame tree creeper, you could let it out and it would catch the insects in your house. So it was a useful thing to have. You could have thought it. Obviously, much more environmentally friendly than using an aerosol insecticide. So, have we now all got pieces of paper in the room? I think we've got a sort of wide look from the crowd. So let's move on. Two of the rounds owe quite a lot to Ray. One of them actually would. I don't. Is Ray online? Is he one of our?
He's not. No, we've had a problem with the Zoom link, and I think because it's had to very few people, as you can see, join this.
Oh, that's a shame because one of the rounds is not based on his book at all, but I think he'd do very well. It's about French bird names. Not entirely serious. Please take it as a bit of fun. So we're going to start off with a round that I've called Divided by a Common Language. I am going to give you 8 names of birds that have been misnamed by our American cousins. This is a very long list. All I want you to do for these 8 birds is to put the proper, i.e. British English name down. Okay, we'll start off with something they call a parasitic jaeger. What is a parasitic jaeger, or Jaeger if you're of German descent? I should be looking up. Okay, number 2. The Americans call a common merganser. What should they really call it? Number 3. What do the Americans call a common murre? What should they call that? Okay. Number 4. The Americans call this bird a black-bellied plover. What do we call it? Number 5. A bird where perhaps they've got a little bit more entitlement to give it the wrong name, as it mostly occurs in the New World. They call it the common loon. What do we call it? The next one, they call it the eared grebe. What do we call it? Number 7, they call it the horned grebe. What do we call it? I can see 1 or 2 people will now be changing the previous answer. And finally, they call it a bank swallow. What do we call it? No. What I suggest we do is because it's not very serious, I will give the answers at the end of each round. Keep the score if you like. We won't take any interim scores till we get to the very end, unless somebody's getting 100% all the way around, when I can tell, we'll be able to tell from the smiles on your faces. So we'll go through the answers and mark yourself and see how you did. The parasitic Jaeger or Jaeger is Arctic skewer. Well done. And their common merganser is Goosander. Well done, Rob. And the common mer is what? Guillemot. That's one of the many cases where the American name is actually an older English name than the one we use. And the next one, black-bellied plover, is grey plover. Well done. Now, the 2 small medium grebes. Which one is the eared grebe? Oh, sorry, common loon, yes. What is the common loon? Great Northern Diver, indeed. As shown on a Canadian $1 coin. A loonie, yes. The Canadian dollar is the loonie. Going back to our grebes, eared grebe is... No. Black-necked, well done. So it follows from that, what is the horned grebe? The slab, well done. And finally, a bank swallow is, and I heard somebody shout out, San Martin, well done. Okay. Now, this bit really is, this is probably the most challenging name possibly, challenging round rather, but there's some interesting stories behind it. So we'll go through the questions. There's no shame at all in not getting quite a few of them. So, and then we'll go through what the answers are, and you can all have a gasp or laugh or look of despair at how they managed to do it. We're going to look at the scientific names. And as you probably know, the scientific names are, people call them Latin names. They're not really Latin. Most of them have words derived from Latin or Greek. And often other things get sort of mixed in with them as well. Most of these, in fact, I think all of these actually are largely so-called Latin or so-called Greek names in both parts. But what I've done to make it challenging is I've translated back, with the help of Ray, from the Latin or Greek elements, and sometimes the non-Latin or Greek elements being given a Latin look to them. And I've done my best at giving the English translation of the scientific name. So we start off with, what bird, its scientific name would translate as Old Man of the Desert? Yep. They are all Western Palearctic birds. I don't think Old Man of the Desert has occurred in the UK. Actually, I think that's the only one that hasn't occurred in the UK, looking at this lot. No, I just want, I want the ordinary English name of the bird whose scientific name translates as Old Man of the Desert. Right, okay. Shall we throw in the easier one? The scientific name of this bird translates to cave dweller, cave dweller. Okay, that was an easy one, so we'll move swiftly on to number 3. This is a real odd one. The scientific name of this translates approximately to ox-nosed thick leg. Ox-nosed thick leg. Nosed thick leg. Or bull-nosed thick leg, it could be. Right. Looking at a lot of I haven't got a clue faces. Shall we move on to the next one? Next one is a lot easier, partly because I'll give you part of the answer in the English translation, but it's a bit of a surprising puzzler one nonetheless. Country dwelling falcon. This is question 4, I hope. Okay. Number 5. Remember, we are looking at Western Palearctic birds, but one Western Palearctic bird is not a red jungle fowl. Translates approximately as red farmyard chicken. Red farmyard chicken. What do you think that might be? Red farmyard chicken. That's how its scientific name, which I think is all, it might be part Greek, part Latin. That's how it translates. And just to give Ray's book another plug, if this sort of thing interests you, this is the book to have. Right. Number 6. You might get this if you know your scientific names. Scottish hare foot. Scottish hare, as in lagomorph. Oh, nearly gave it away. Foot. Scottish hare foot. Just 2 more to go. Number 7. This scientific name translates as upland small bird. Upland small bird. And that actually may not be very helpful. And finally, an easy one. What? This is quite a well-known one. What scientific name translates as puffin puffin? When you've all suffered enough, say yes. Right, that sounds like it's time for some fascinating answers. Well, right. Did anybody work out what the old man of the desert was? It's the bald ibis. Now, I have no qualifications to try and pronounce it. Geronticus eremita apparently means old man of the desert. That's the bald ibis. That is quite appropriate, really. I hope you all got number 2.
Yes.
What was it then? Wren, well done. Now, this is a weird one, isn't it? The ox-nosed or bull-nosed leg. You might, if you're aware of the fact that the group of waders to which the stone curlew, which is what it is, belongs, sometimes referred to as thick knees. I see somebody worked it out. But the genus, again, apologies for that, it actually means ox-nosed or bull-nosed because they are a short-beaked wader, apparently. That's why somebody, back in the mists of time, gave them that name. So there we are, stone curlew, ox-nosed thick leg. That falcon, and probably one of the most misnamed ones where you think, you know, where you get into the family. Does anybody know what Falco rusticonus is? It's the gyr falcon. Gyr falcon or Gaia falcon, if you, the nice big Arctic falcon that's prized for falconry, white in Greenland, grey in Iceland. That is rusticonus, despite the fact it's not really a country bird at all. It's a biotic. And if you thought that was difficult to work out, has anybody got a clue what the red farmyard chicken might be? It's the red-legged partridge. Oh, well done. Well done. Alectoris is apparently derived from, I can't remember the Latin or the Greek, for a farmyard chicken. Okay, well, I think this the Scottish harefoot. Anybody get that? No, you. Oh no, it's the red grouse. Lagopus means hare foot, as in feet like hares. And then one of the most obscure ones, upland small bird. It's the willow tip of all things. And I can't pronounce, I'm Poecile, Poecile. This means small bird. And montanus, of course, means upland or mountain. So everybody shout out what Puffin Puffin is.
Thank you.
Thank you. So well done. Well, I hope you all found that very educational. Right. How are we doing time-wise? Madam Chairman? Another one?
So it needs to finish within about 5 or 10.
Okay, right.
That's okay.
Well, let's see how we get on with the next round, because this is eponyms. If you heard Ray's talk, you'll heard how the Americans, being very politically correct, are trying to remove real people's names from the English names of birds. We're going to have a round now on some of those people whose names are included in the English bird names. And what I want is for you to give the name. You needn't give the full name, just the surname that appears in the bird's name for all the following 8 people. First one is a German zoologist and explorer who in the late 18th and early 19th century explored much of Russia and Siberia. He has given his name, or his name has been applied, to a number of birds ranging from a very small warbler to one of the largest raptors. Who is he? Okay. Number two. We're looking for the surname of a 19th century English clergyman and Middle Eastern explorer. He was originally a supporter of Darwin, but later turned against him. And amongst the birds named after him are a species of warbler and a rather more colourful relative of the starling found in the Middle East. Who is our clergyman, naturalist, and explorer? So,
Can you repeat the question?
okay. He's a 19th century English clergyman explorer who did a lot of exploring in the Middle East. Birds named after him include a warbler and a colourful relation of the starling found in the Middle East? I heard Colin Wilson say 1 week mixed with it. Okay. Numbers 3 and 4 are both Italians whose names have been passed on to warblers. I'd like you to correctly attribute each name as follows. Number 3 is somebody who goes back to the 18th century, who actually saw the warbler to which his name was given in Sicily. Who is he? Our second Italian is a 20th century Italian naturalist whose name has been applied to another species of warbler. You might know the answer. Okay, number 5. How this person's name came to apply to a bird is quite an interesting story, really. This person was an employee of the Hudson's Bay Company, and the species in question was named after him to effectively thank him for what he did in saving a collection of specimens that had been collected by an explorer who died on his travels. And our armor man, as they say, was able to get the collection and bring it back safely to the museum for which it was destined. Who is our heroic Canadian sailor who rescued the collection, who's given his name clue to a species of wildfowl? Okay, let's take a much easier one. At number 6, an 18th century artist and wood engraver from Northumberland. Now, I'm giving you no more than that because you ought to be able to get it. Right. Number 7. This is an American, or actually a Scottish-American ornithologist of the late 18th and early 19th century, a real pioneer in American ornithology, who was given his name, amongst other things, to a wader that's unusual this side of the Atlantic, and also a very scarce seabird this side. And finally, there was a 19th century British naval Arctic explorer who died in mysterious and tragic circumstances. His name was applied to the species of seabird. Who was he? Question one is a German zoologist of the late 18th and early 19th century who explored Russia and Siberia. Birds named after him include a small warbler and a large raptor.
What's number 3, Neil?
Number 3 was one of the first of those two Italians. This is the 18th century Italian. This is both of our Italians have warblers named after them, inconveniently. Has anybody got to the point where they want to give up, or are you still on? That's okay. Shall we go through them? Right. The first one, actually, there was a little bit of a sort of potential confusion, and I think the confusion was I heard people muttering a name, because actually there are both Pallas's sea eagle and Stella's sea eagle, and it was Pallas that I was after because he was a little bit later than Stella. He went into the 19th century, whereas Stella was only in the 18th. So it was Pallas we were looking for, Peter Pallas. Number 2, our 19th century English clergyman was Canon Henry Baker Tristram. as in Tristram's grackle and Tristram's warbler. Shall we take the two Italian warbler namers together? And I think I heard one name being mentioned quite frequently. The 18th century Italian naturalist was Francesco Ceti. And the 20th century one was Edoardo Moltoni. And Moltoni only had a bird named after him relatively recently, because when they split subalpine warbler 3 ways, they had a western one, they had an eastern one, and they had one in the middle. So they decided to name it after Edoardo Moltoni. And ironically, that's the one that retains the subalpina scientific name. Now, our heroic 19th century employee of the Hudson's Bay Company was, yes, Bernard Ross of Ross's Goose. And the 18th century artist and wood engraver from Northumberland? Exactly, Buick. You thought you'd all get that. Now, our Scottish-American pioneer ornithologist was Colin. Exactly. Alexander Wilson. Your great-great-uncle, perhaps. And finally, the tragic British naval explorer was Franklin. Franklin, indeed, yes. I don't know about you, but actually I think, bearing in mind the Americans, or some Americans wanted to change all the English names to eliminate people's names, I think most of those were deserving of their memorial. Okay. Right. How are we doing for time? We've got time for another round? Okay.
Started a bit later, right? So yes,
Okay.
one more would be nice.
One more. Okay, we're now going to go beyond Ray's book, and I'd rather hoping Ray would be online or here in person, because I think he'd have actually murdered this round. Because we're going to look at some French bird names. But I'm actually going to translate them into English, and you simply have got to let me know or put down what you think the real English name of these birds are. Okay, what do the French call St. Martin's Harrier? The English name of the bird, the French called Cousin Saint-Martin. Oh yeah, you see, I just studied. And Ray isn't here to correct my pronunciation, so. Okay. Number 2. The French call this bird Grand Duke. Grand Duke. What is a Grand Duke? This might help, because number 3, they call this bird Small Duke, Petit Duke. So it might help if you got the Grand Duke, you might get the Petit Duke. Small duty. Okay, have you got your ducal answers down? Here's a rather easier one, I think. French call it the summer teal, sarcelle d'été. We call it summer teal, sarcelle d'été. What do we call it? Okay. Number 5. The French name for this bird translates as laughing gull, but it's not the American rarity that we know. Muette rieuse. What is that laughing gull? What is its English species name? Number 6. It's the late Eric Mortimer. Let's bring a bit more laughter into your lives. The French call this species laughing goose. Hey, yes. What do we call it? Right, number 7, we're nearly there now. The French name for this bird translates approximately as banded or striped wasp eater. What do we call it? And what I think will be the last question of the evening, number 8. What do the French call a little penguin? Petit mignon. What is that? What's the English name of that species? Mignon, I think. Right. Do we all think we've had enough time? Right. Okay. Well, let's go through these. I have to say, unfortunately, I don't have. Although perhaps Ray's next project might be to do this on the French bird names, because some of them aren't obvious, some of them I can guess, and I'll give you my guesses while we're about it. Although they may be obvious when you hear what the species is. St. Martin's harrier, Buzard Saint-Martin, is the hen harrier. And I wonder whether that's because St. Martin's Day is the 11th of November, and it may be because it's the one that turns up in winter. Who knows? Now, our pair of dukes and Grand Duke. Did you know that one? No?
Eagle owl.
Well done. It's the eagle owl. So what's a petit duck? Scops owl. Completely different. Probably the easiest one of this round is the summer teal. Sarcelle d'été is Gargany. Yes, indeed. Now, I would have thought that there were better candidates be called laughing gull by the French. What do you think that is? Black. Who said black-headed gull? Well done. It is indeed black-headed gull. But I would have thought herring gull laughs a lot more than black-headed gulls do. Black-headed in Latin. Oh, ridibundus, yeah. Oh, fair enough. Gosh. What about the laughing goose? Not a cackling goose. It is a goose. It's what they call a white-fronted goose, would you believe? No. Anybody who's been to those wonderful migration watch points in the Pyrenees may have got this one. The banded wasp eater is... It is indeed honey buzzard. So if you're an organ predictor and you hear somebody say, Vondré, Vondré, that means there are honey buzzards coming through. Vondré adipole. And finally, you might have got this, a clue for this from our first talk. The little penguin is... Razorbill. If the... Right, well, I hope you all enjoyed that. I hope you learned something from it. I don't. Does anybody want to declare any scores? No, you don't have to. Okay, well, let's go down. How many people got 20? How many people got 10? Oh, there we go. Let's go up again. Oh, we got 120 down there. Robert. Way well done, Robert. Your prize is a round of applause.
Thank you very much, Neil. I'm very good. Even though I started well and went downhill after that. Thank you, Neil.
Okay.
Right, well, it's time for the refreshments in the room. I'm going to put up one last quiz. We will be going automatically over on slides like we did last year for the ThinkPads. And it will explain it on the first slide what it is, but it's basically it's what's name the bird. There's 9 photos, picture birds for you to name, and then 10 cryptic clues
All right.
following that.
Right.
And I will put that running. But please enjoy the refreshments. And yeah, well done, Neil. Thank you.